Dear church, let's talk about encouraging preachers. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. I'm excited about my guest today. Dale Jenkins is joining us all the way from Tennessee. Dale, thank you so much for being on today.
Chris, it's great to be with you. I'm honored to be on one of my favorite podcasts today.
Yes, sir. We've talked quite a bit over the phone. I'm disappointed that I haven't had you on sooner. I've had your brother on. He's a recurring guest on here, and
now, I've been sitting by my phone waiting for this call for years now, and it finally came. So I have arrived.
I'm so sorry. We're going to have to get with the booking agent and get on to him or fire him or something. Dale, I wanted you on today because you are so good. You and your brother both, but you're so good at encouraging preachers. You've kind of made that your mission over the years. And I know you have helped me tremendously, and I know you've helped others. I want to talk a little bit today about encouraging preachers and also the many programs that the Jenkins Institute is doing in order to reach that end. First, though, I just want you to tell us about yourself. Tell us a little bit about the Jenkins Institute and the work that you guys are doing for those who may not know.
Well, I'm just a guy that's been very blessed. Had a great mom and dad who loved the Lord and taught me to love Him early on, and then married well above myself and married this great girl from Alabama that just is humble and kind and sweet. And we were blessed with 2 kids, and because of Melanie and God, they ended up loving the Lord. And now we have 5 grandchildren and a 6th on the way. And my 2 sons are in youth ministry, and I'm blessed by that. And I get to preach every Sunday at the Spring Meadows Church of Christ, and I get to do a lot of stuff that I'm not sure why I get to do it, to be honest about it. Every time I get an invitation to be a part of something, it's like, well, that's kind of neat. I'm glad I got to do that. Not sure why they asked me, but it's honored to be a part of it. So it's just a real blessing to get to be a part of a lot of fun stuff in the Lord's kingdom. I love God's church, and I love God's people, and it just really excites me when I learn about something good and get to be a part of something good and get to promote something good. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just real fortunate. So, a little about the Institute, if you've mentioned that as well.
Sure.
It was probably about 17 years ago, probably in a time of frustration. I wrote a blog post. I started my first blog, wrote a blog post that kind of talked through some of that frustration, not in an angry, I hate the Lord, I hate the church, I hate elders sort of way, but just here's kind of what preachers deal with. And when I wrote it, I thought, I'm such an odd person. Nobody else feels this way, but I need to get that out there, how I feel. And the reaction blew my mind. I was amazed at how many people read it. No one was reading my blog. I don't know anybody reading any blogs back then, but suddenly I got all these comments and people writing, and I started thinking, well, maybe I'm not as odd as I thought I was. And so I was asked to speak on a program somewhere, and I wrote a post about it, about a minister's heart, and 21st Century ended up publishing that into a book form. And then I started this weird thing called the Scoop blog. And I don't know what to call it other than this weird thing called the Scoop blog. And we post churches looking for preachers. It started through a friend of mine named Andy Conley, who would call me after I moved to Nashville. He lives in Nashville, and he called me and say, "Hey, I got a scoop for you." And we played this little game of Middle Tennessee, outside of Middle Tennessee, young, old, somebody coming, somebody going, and we'd try to guess. And then we started playing this, we called it the napkin game. So we'd write down what churches we thought would open next and who we thought would go there. And we just silly fun is all it was.
Yeah.
That's all it was. And one day it dawned on me, there's probably a lot of preachers out there that like to have a little fun with this. And so we started publishing churches looking for preachers. And that kind of hit a little bit. And one day Jeff and I were sitting at a lecture at Freed Hardeman. I'm trying to remember who was lecturing. I want to think it was, I can't remember who it was, but one of our great preachers was lecturing. We're in Old Chapel Hall at Freed Hardeman, and Jeff had started his thoughts from the mound. He leaned over and said, "We ought to merge our blogs." And I said, "Jeff, you don't want to do that. I'll get you in all kinds of trouble. You're mature and wise, and I'm just kind of a wild card." And he said, "No, we ought to do it." So we started talking about it that night back at the hotel. I said, we ought to come up with a name for it. And Jeff said, well, we ought to name it for Dad. And so we named it the Jenkins Institute. And so that's how that all got started.
Wow. So that's an epiphany at the Freed Hardeman lectures, and it just all rolled from there. That's interesting.
Yeah.
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 Among the many resources, you mentioned the Scoops blog, which is great. And by the way, you can find all these resources at the Jenkins Institute online. So tell us the web address again.
It's just thejenkinsinstitute.com.
.com.
Thejenkinsinstitute.com. Simple way to find us. And we try to do a lot of things. And through the years, it's just kind of evolved into where we started thinking about ways we can encourage preachers. We publish a 300-word post every Sunday night or Monday morning called For Your Monday. That grew out of a better conference that we did. Better Conference is a conference to encourage preachers to be better at the thing that we all do, and that is preach.
Yes.
And so we were talking at that, and we're talking about how most preachers quit on Monday. You can hire any preacher on Monday, we've always heard it said. And so just find the right Monday.
Right.
And so a guy wrote us after that and said, are there any resources out there to encourage preachers on Monday? And we started thinking, I don't know any that are doing that. And so that's how the little 300-word post that we put out on Sunday night or Monday morning came about. And then a few years ago, we started thinking about how much time we both spend in prayer for our fellow preachers. And so we started saying, why don't we just pray for all the preachers? And so we started putting out a post on Saturday morning to pray for their work that they're doing on Sunday. And then we started a thing where we started doing some research. And I'm a little bit of a numbers guy. I'm a little analytical in the way I approach that sort of thing. And I love to know stuff. And so the research arm of the Institute started through that. And then we started publishing books, and books came through it, and do some weird stuff like Ministers of Mocha, where we talk to preachers about preaching in an odd-looking car, an unusual, exotic-type car, and we drink coffee together and just talk shop with preachers. And so, and through the years, it's grown into a lot of different stuff, and I don't even know where to go with it all, but it's been fun to be a part of it.
Well, one of the things that you guys have started recently is a mentoring program where you match somewhat older preachers with some younger preachers. And, the idea is on a weekly basis or more that the mentor gets with his mentee and he talks to them about ministry. You have some topics that are lined out for each time that you meet. And, the hope is that you can meet face to face, but at least through phone calls, emails, those kind of things, just be a mentor and help them through ministry. I am honored to get to be a part of that. And, I went into that thinking, what a great program. And hopefully I can help in some way. I don't know how, but hopefully I can help. What I've learned is I've been helped tremendously because I don't know if this was your intention, but for me and Russell, the gentleman that I correspond with, it has become as much of a, hey, let's bounce ideas off. Let's talk about ministry. Let's encourage one another as much as any. So I feel like I've gained more than that from that than Russell ever probably could have. But I'm really liking that program. Tell us a little bit about that.
So this started about 4 years ago. Jeff and I were having a conversation about young preachers and just generally the frustrations that they have and who they go to. And we realized that not every young preacher has someone they could go to.
Right.
And so we said, why don't we start a mentoring program? That was just how it started. And so each year we welcome 20 new guys into it. This is actually the first group of 20 guys that you're a part of. Mm-hmm. Welcome 20 new young preachers into it. We'll limit it to that. And we try to it's as simple as can be. Just pair two guys together. And I'll tell you, Chris, Russell has called me twice over the last 6 months or so, just thanking me for for the two of us pairing you and he together.
Oh. Yeah, he's been a blessing to me.
Well, he's talked about how much it's meant to him, and he is a sharp young man.
He is.
But really, he is one of my favorite people I've been around. But he does need somebody he can mentor, so that can mentor him, that he can bounce ideas off of, and that he can talk with about things. And we do try to provide a little bit of structure to it, where if the guy's stumped about where to talk to the guy about, he'll have something. But it's as simple as can be, and we're trying to keep it that way. And the idea is once a week, talk, and once a quarter, try to get together if you can for a little bit longer. And several guys have done really well. We've had a couple drop out. That hadn't shocked us either. We knew that would happen, but the ones that have stayed with it are really benefiting and enjoying it. So thank you for being a part of that.
Oh, thank you. It is absolutely an amazing program, and I've benefited greatly. Dale, let me ask you, who have been some of the bigger mentors in your life? I mean, I imagine that you and Jeff are coming at this because you've had help along the way to kind of get to where you're at now, and you want to return the favor. So who are some people that have mentored you along the way, and what was some of the best advice you got along the way?
Well, that's two questions there. Thank you for them. Those are great questions. The first one, I'm really glad you asked, because I get to honor a couple of people that have meant the world to me. And obviously, outside of our family, there have been some people inside our family. I won't go into all of them, but there was a guy named Glenn Posey, who you probably don't know. He was down in Alabama, well-known preacher in the state of Alabama, and did such effective work there in several different congregations. And when I first started preaching, he was preaching about 20 miles from me, and I was rather frustrated once upon a time in that work. And I went to see Brother Glenn, and he invited me in his office and sat down and listened to me and heard me out and gave me some suggestions. And then over the next couple of years, I would literally try to find excuses to make that 20-mile drive to that city to see Glenn, just hoping that he would have some time. And he seemed to always have time. I now know, looking back, that he had a billion other things to do. Yeah. But he took time out for a young preacher, and he answered so many questions, and he helped me in so many ways. And so when I start thinking of guys that have mentored me, it's hard to put anybody higher outside of my dad and Jeff than Brother Posey. His influence on my life was so very powerful.
Yeah.
And then just through the years, I've been blessed with some older preachers, and so once I say that, I really can't say anything, because then they know they're older preachers, and that'll get me in trouble for calling them older preachers that have just talked to me about time management, about balance, worked me through some challenging biblical issues and some challenging brotherhood issues. Have taken the time to just listen to me when I needed to talk, and to pray with me. And just the blessing that is to a young preacher, if you've been preaching more than 10 years and you don't have somebody in your life that you're doing that with, you need to find somebody you can do that with. Because when we first get out there, if you can rewind in your mind, when we first get out there, there are so many things. I was thinking yesterday, a friend of mine at Spring Meadows lost his sister last week, and he talked about watching her die. Yeah. And it reminded me of the first time I sat in a room and watched someone die. I'd been called in. I was 23 years old, 22 years old. I'd just been preaching a couple of years at this church, or no, actually it wasn't a year yet. And the family called me in, and I thought, I never had anybody ask me about the Deuteronomic theory on interpreting the scripture. But I've sat with a lot of families when they died, and I spent a whole year studying higher textual criticism in college, but I had never had a class where they talked about how to sit with someone and help them die. Yeah. And I know I'm not being critical of our colleges, because I don't know that I would have been ready to learn that while I was in college. Yeah. But as soon as I got out and got in the real world of preaching, I realized there were so many things about practical ministry that I needed people to talk to. And so one of the reasons that mentoring program comes up, and one of the reasons my life has been blessed, is I've had those people in my life who have helped me navigate those challenging times.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's the same with me as well. Is it, you got to have somebody to fall back on, right? And it can't always be your wife, although mine is just exceptional at that. But you don't want to bring every problem to her, and there's just some things you need a preacher friend to fall back on, and you guys are doing great things in order to make that happen. I want to ask you from the church level, what can elders do to encourage their preacher?
So I appreciate that question, and I can really only speak from experience here, and know that, first of all, anything that churches do that is specifically designed to encourage preachers will mean the world to that preacher. But I thought about one church I worked with. There was an elder by the name of Hoyt Snow, and our move to that church was rather difficult. It was easy for me. I was happy and excited about starting new work. My family was not happy and excited about leaving where we left and going to a new place. The first 2 or 3 years we were at that church, I rarely had an encounter with Brother Snow that he didn't ask me about Melanie and my kids. You know, how
Wow.
Melanie and the children doing, how Philip and Andrew doing. And I look back on it, you ask, what can elders do to encourage preachers? Check on their families. I mean, that preacher goes out of town on a meeting. That elder and his wife take the preacher's wife and the kids out to lunch on Sunday, and let them know if they need anything to call them. Call during the week and check on them when the preacher's out of town, and just to ask about how they're doing.
Yeah.
That's one major thing. Another thing I think about is my friend Chester. I have never heard the man pray that he did not pray specifically for every member of our staff at Spring Meadows, for every and he takes time and he prays about what's going on in our lives. He prays for us in every prayer.
That's awesome.
The third one that I'd add, I have a third here because I'm a preacher. You got to have 3 points. Would be, I would say, to protect them from silly distractors. And so I don't know fully how to do all of that, but I'm told that when our North was doing his legendary work at Madison, that the elders never told him about people who came and complained about him and about things that he was doing. I don't know that would be healthy for me, because that might encourage me to continue to do some dumb things that I do. So I might need somebody to come to me. But there are silly distractors. There are people who, for whatever reason, may have been hurt in the past. Maybe they had a bad experience with a preacher. Maybe their dad was a preacher and they didn't like him, or for whatever reason, they don't like preachers. And anything they can do to discourage or put a mark or besmirch the concept of preaching, they will do. And if elders are wise, they will do their very best to minimize the impact of that person on their preacher's life. And specifically, they will tell the preacher, listen, Brother Smith came to us again. I don't think we have any Smiths at Spring Meadows, I can say that. No, we do. We just had some place membership. They're good people. Brother Smith came to us, and he complained about this, and you need to work on that. Instead, they go to Brother Smith and they say, listen, all you do is complain about the preacher. Why would we listen to you anyway?
Yeah.
I just think that the big thing would be protect them from those silly things that are not germane to their work. And if you don't mind, I'll add a fourth here.
Please do.
I would say mentor your preacher. Now, there are more preachers watching this than elders. I'm thankful for any elder that watches stuff like this. But,
Sure.
But there are more preachers watching it. Now, preachers, here's the message to you. You've got to allow yourself to be mentored to be mentored.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the great blessings in my life was when my elders started coming to me and saying, you would be a better preacher if, and then they'd say something. And the difference was when I started listening to that, instead of being fearful, oh, that means they're going to fire me. Oh, I need to be mad at them because they don't like me or whatever.
Right.
And that's the natural reaction. But if instead we'd say, these guys have a vested interest in me being the best preacher I can be, because if I do well, the church will do better. And so they have a vested interest in this. They're not trying to hurt me. They're trying to help me.
Sure.
And if then I will take that suggestion to heart, they should know that church better than I do. Take that suggestion to heart and try to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be mentored.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Allow yourself to be mentored. That's great. What are some of the, you've been dealing with this for quite some time. You've been in ministry a long time, and you've heard about every complaint or every probably reason for being discouraged. What are some of the most common reasons that are given for why preachers are discouraged?
I think most preachers do not feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And I think that may be the primary source of discouragement. Now, I say source. The source of discouragement is Satan, but that may be the primary reason given for discouragement. preaching is not something that is very rare in our preaching life that we preach a sermon and we see immediate impact.
Yeah.
I can name on one hand the number of times at my local congregation that I preached a sermon and someone came forward and wanted to be baptized that I had not been studying with.
Yeah.
Now, that's happened a few times, but it doesn't happen often.
Sure.
I can name maybe 5 or 6 times in my life where I could say that specific sermon affected our congregation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sermon I got from Andy Stanley called, I call it Information versus Invitation. I have a sermon I got from my dad called It's Under Your Thumb. It's a sermon on giving. I have 3 or 4 times I preached sermons, and afterward I thought that changed this church. When I preached the Information Invitation sermon, our attendance in about a 6-month period went from 175 to 275.
Yeah.
That sermon made an impact.
Sure.
When I did the It's Under Your Thumb sermon, our contributions over the next 6 months went up about 20% over the next 6 months. It made an impact. The elders said we trace it to several things, but primarily that one thing. But the reality is, I've been preaching 40 years. That means I've preached several thousand times, 2,000 to 4,000 times in those 40 years. I named 2 occurrences.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen real often.
Right.
And so what discourages preachers? You do this every week, and we don't see the marked improvement week to week and the spiritual growth that happens. Now, we take a young man that goes off to college, and he comes back from college, and we say, man, what is that little kid running around the pews 10 years ago? What happened there? Well, probably college influenced him some, but in all likelihood, your preaching the last 6 or 8 years as he was maturing affected him a great deal. You just couldn't see it week to week. He had to go away and come back for you to see where he was spiritually.
Yeah.
So I think the discouraging thing is that we don't see the fruit of our labor most often.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, sometimes, I don't know if you've been there, but I'll ask myself, is anybody really even listening? It makes you wonder. Then something will happen or something will be said that makes you realize, oh, yeah, they may not all be listening, but some definitely are. And that's just reinforcement. And that seems to come along at just the right time ever so often to make you realize, oh, yeah, they are listening. And segue to that, what can the church do to encourage their preacher?
Well, they can be aware that every preacher has arrows shot at him. And just frankly, I would say try to find creative ways to verbally express your appreciation. The standard good sermon preacher or thank you for the lesson preacher does not stand up. I wish it did, but as it doesn't stand up in comparison to the one person who walks out and takes issue with you for no reason at all.
Yeah.
I didn't like your tie today, or I didn't like that you mentioned this issue today or said this today. That one thing will stand up, and 300 people may have walked out and said, man, that's a great lesson, or appreciate the lesson. So I would say to a church, as to a member watching this, try to find creative ways to say to your preacher, I appreciate you. The denominational world has Pastor Appreciation Month. It's the month of October.
Yep.
We're not denominationalists. I'm not advocating that we have a pastor or a pastor appreciation month. But I am advocating that you try as a member to specifically, if you appreciate your preacher, to find ways to let them know. And in this day and age, send them an email, a text message, anything like that goes a world of a way toward keeping that guy in this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we talked about it a while ago with elders, but, church the same way is I feel like looking at our preacher as an investment and not an expense, or, from an eldership standpoint, I think all too often that's the rub, is he an investment or is he an expense? Oh, we're having to pay this guy, or no, we want to pay this guy, and understanding that we have we have a partnership here, a covenant relationship here, and he's our preacher, we're his elders, or he's our preacher, but he's also a member of this family, and instead of viewing the preacher, and the preacher can do this as well, you view yourself as aloof from the congregation, and instead of as a part of this and a part of this family. I think that goes a long way as well, wouldn't you say?
Well, that is great. Thank you, Chris. I've had people that will introduce me and say, "This is my friend."
Yeah.
I like it when people say, "This is my preacher," but when they say, "This is my friend," that means a lot too.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this, Dale, from the work that you're doing with the Jenkins Institute, from the years and years that you've been doing this, as far as, I say years and years, I make it sound like you're really old. You're only 35, and I keep acting like you're really old. So, but no, in all your experience, what one piece of advice would you give to preachers that may be discouraged, or maybe you wrote a book, and I love the book, Don't Quit on a Monday, and you've since added to that other volumes to that, but I love that book. What would you suggest to preachers that are discouraged? What piece of advice would you give?
Well, the first thing I'd say is welcome to the club.
Yeah.
I can't prove it. The text doesn't necessarily say it as specifically as some would want it to say it, but Paul is discouraged in 2 Corinthians. Chapters 4 and 5, he is facing some times of discouragement, and we all face it. All preachers face it. So part of what I say is welcome to the club.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is something, some of the things that I hear preachers complain about, I want to say you signed up for this.
Yeah.
If you didn't know coming in, you know now. It doesn't matter how many times you move, there are certain elements that are going to be there. So just this is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also say Satan uses discouragement as a resource. Satan has a real interest in you not doing well as a minister.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he gets Joe Blow out there as one of his converts that denies the Lord and the faith and the church and the truth, he's got one person. Let's say you preach for a church of 100 members, and he gets your soul. Mm-hmm. And you're still trying to get up every week because you want that money they're paying or whatever. He suddenly tapped into a wellspring of potential converts to what he wants to have happen. He has an interest in you not being strong spiritually.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest piece of advice I would say is to consider the source of your discouragement. It's a person that won't leave you alone. That's a strong possibility. They've complained since the moment you got there. Mm-hmm. I had a friend at one of the first churches I worked with. The guy's name was Ron Davis. Ron took me to lunch one day, and he said, I just want you to know, he said, be aware, the people that didn't like Bob, that wasn't the guy's name, the previous preacher, but I'll use his name because somebody might know him. The people that didn't like Bob, for the most part, won't like you. And the people who love Bob and encourage him, for the most part, will be the people who encourage you.
Yeah.
And through the years, I've found that is most often the case. And those people who are discouragement, they won't leave you alone. It's not you. It's what you do. And it may be because of something going on in their life that you represent the opposite of what it is.
Yeah.
Consider the source. Is the source of discouragement a person? Is it laziness? I mean, you don't get out and, kill that beast every day. You don't get out and work. You don't make something happen in your life. Sometimes when I'm discouraged, I'm sitting around thinking, well, this is not good. Nothing's happening. We're not baptizing anybody. We're not having new people come our way, or the church isn't energetic. And I'll say, wait a minute, what do I need to do? I need to make something happen here. I have a responsibility here as a minister, and then I try to make something happen.
Yeah.
Is it because you need to know something that you're not? That may be the source of discouragement. I'm not as effective as I need to be, and I need to figure out how to be more effective. So I don't know all the ins and outs of what to do when you feel discouraged, but maybe the biggest would be to press the rewind button in your life and go back to when you first started this. Think about why you do it, and then refresh that. Revelation chapter 3 talks about remember. Yeah. Remember your first love. Go back to your first love. That sort of thing. I didn't get into preaching to deal with people distractors. I didn't get into preaching for the money. I didn't get into preaching for fame. I got into preaching because I want to help people grow to know the Lord and love him better and to know his word more. And so when I go back and I redo that, then all those other issues are not as big an issues as they were before.
Oh, man. Great stuff. So remember your purpose, remember why you got into this, and consider the source. Like it. That's great advice. Dale, before I let you go, one of the things that we like to do on this podcast is promote. So anything that you've got going on right now, we know the Jenkins Institute is a wonderful resource, and we want to plug that for sure. But anything else you've got going on right now, please let us know about it and tell us how we can get a hold of it.
Well, I don't have a whole lot. Just everything I do basically is through the Jenkins Institute or through the Spring Meadows congregation. And I would say right now, if I could promote something, I'd promote people to start doing stuff on a big scale.
Yeah.
Everything that I'm seeing opening back up, it's not opening little. It's opening big. We're coming out of this pandemic, and I think people are tired of it, and they're ready to be together. Vacation Bible schools I'm speaking in, they're having the biggest crowds they ever had.
Yep.
Gospel meetings, they're having great crowds. Camps are packed full. You go to a workshop like you just got back from at Red River.
Yep.
Just huge. We do an event like EYC or CYC. People are tired of being in. So now, as a local preacher, or as an elder, or as a member, is the time to say, in our congregation, in our community, we're going to do some big stuff, and we're going to try to promote it well and make something happen for the Lord's cause.
Yes, great stuff. Man, Dale, thank you so much for joining.
Chris, thank you for all that you do. Man, you're the guy that everybody I hear talking about. They say, this guy's the guy that's doing everything right now. We're proud of you and thankful for your work. Keep it up.
Well, thank you, Dale, and love you and love the work that you're doing. And we're going to definitely have you on more than this one time, okay? I'm going to talk to the booking agent.
All right. Again, thanks for letting me be.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. If you have a question specifically for Dale, we'll make sure that he gets it. You can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. Comments, questions are welcome. And again, if you have something specifically for Dale, we'll forward it on to him. I'm sure he'd be glad to answer it and to give any kind of advice. We know that we have preachers that are watching, and so if we can encourage you in any way, please let us continue to do that as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.